Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well today. Today I have a very special upload that I cannot wait to share with you guys. Before we get into this upload, though, a couple links I'd like to share. As you know, I rely on my Patreon, my PayPal, and my merch store to help the channel to continue to grow and go. All of those links are in the description below. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1, 2, and 3, the audiobook version. They were written by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeffrey Nadolny. They're available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, and the links to those audiobooks are in the description as well. Now, everyone, I have taken enough of your time. Let's get on with today's upload. Shall we? Alright guys, about 6 months ago, I was offered an opportunity of a lifetime for myself. A researcher named Tom Lyons, who has researched and written quite a few encounter books. Sasquatch, Dogman, well, he's got 3 of the Dogman, but many Sasquatch, approached me and said, hey, I've got these 3 Dogman books. I listen to your channel on occasion. I'd like you to narrate them for me. And I sat there for a couple days, nervous, and finally agreed. So today what I'm going to do is I'm going to randomly choose a chapter out of each book to share with you. And then hopefully you guys go over and check out these audiobooks. Also, there's softcover and digital copies as well. They are truly 3 of the best Dogman encounter books that I've read, and I'm not just saying that because I narrate them. I'm honestly saying that because I've read many Dogman encounter books, and to be honest, these 3 blew me away because they were not out in the public eye. They were people who reached out to Tom and shared their encounters, just like you guys do with me. And that's one of the bigger reasons why I chose to do it. So what we're going to do is go from book 1, 2, and 3. Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1. Location, Carmine, Oklahoma. Year, 2017. Hello all, my name is Andrew, and I'm from a very rural town in Oklahoma, known as Carmine. I'm 24 years old, so all of this happened back when I was 22. There isn't a whole lot going on in my hometown, so whenever there's something that causes the tiniest bit of excitement, it feels like the entire community gets involved. The town started getting all worked up once domesticated dogs started to disappear from properties. It was always dogs that were left to roam their respective yards that it seemed like ended up vanishing into thin air. There were never any bodies found, which led a lot of people to believe that someone was going around stealing dogs that they suspected might have been abused and needed better homes. But it got to the point where it started happening so regularly that the theory started to dissolve. The population of domestic canines was dropping so rapidly that people who still did have their dogs started to keep them inside nearly 24 hours a day. I remember how there was one man who claimed that he saw the devil leap into his neighbor's yard and snap their dog's neck, and then run off with the body in an instant. There were a handful of religious folks who seemed to believe this claim. However, many others acknowledged him as little more than a crazy old man. Sometimes in the middle of the night, you would be woken up by firing of a rifle. It wasn't like that had never happened before. After all, coyotes did frequent the area, and sometimes folks would fire a shot into the air to scare them off. But it started happening at such a high rate that people who never had any dogs of their own started to complain about all of the noise. The disappearances of these dogs created so much controversy amongst the residents within the town. The mystery had gone on for so long that there became this unwritten rule to refrain from speaking of it. Unfortunately, that didn't prevent the horror from continuing. I had this one close friend, Kristen, who had been very intrigued in the matter. She was this cool, butch individual who shared many of the same interests as me while growing up. She called me over one day because she had claimed that she had seen the animal that she suspected was responsible for the dog abductions. She had been trying to capture both photographs and footage of the animal, but as you might expect, it never really worked out. Kristen invited me over to her place one night to kick it and wait for this animal to appear. I remember I wasn't that interested for whatever reason, but she was able to persuade me with a six-pack of beer. Shortly after I arrived there, I watched Kristen's older brother place a bunch of raw strip steak in various places around their backyard. The three of us had a good time that night, but saw nothing. I believe it was the following weekend I went back and did the similar routine. Only this time her brother thought it would be a better idea to hang the meat from a few of the large trees that you could see from their backyard. We had a few beers and we were sitting around a space near one of the windows that was lit by nothing more than a handful of candles. It wasn't even that late in the night that we saw movement near the trees. At first, I thought we were looking at a mere coyote, a large one, but a coyote nonetheless. But it was when we watched it stand up on 2 feet and extend an arm way above its head to grab a piece of the strip steak that I knew this was unlike anything I had ever known to exist. Kristen's brother Jim explained that he hung the meat high up there so that it would instantly prove that this was no normal dog. Unlike other encounters I've heard and read, this creature didn't appear overly muscular or anything like that. From where we were sitting, I don't think it was any larger than an average adult man, because of all the other reports talking about how massive these things can get. I wouldn't be at all surprised if what we were looking at was a juvenile, in a way that almost makes it more frightening. If it was a juvenile that was capable of capturing the likely consuming that many dogs, imagine what a full-grown adult Dogman is capable of. I've never seen one of those, and I certainly hope I never do. We watched the supposed juvenile animal for a few minutes before it scampered away. Each of us was shooting footage and snapping photos on our phones, but all of this was too dark to use as proof. Jim didn't set up any lights near the tree at the time because he had convinced himself that a light setup would drastically decrease the chances of being able to attract the animal. So the animal was there, biting at the meat for a few moments and sniffing around the area before it eventually wandered off back into the dark. It wasn't much longer after that people seemed to stop seeing this creature, and the remaining dogs stayed out of harm's way. I'm sure a lot of that is because people were exercising caution by keeping their dogs close and inside most of the time. Therefore, the animal might have become discouraged by the lack of available food compared to what was once there, and decided to move on to a different area. I strongly believe that it was a rare type of hominid that I saw that night, but there were a few people that I knew who were very convinced that they're spirits of some kind. I think it might have been due to the notion that they've had so much trouble capturing any imagery of the creature, even when it was in plain sight, but there is plenty of documented wildlife out there that is also very challenging to photograph, even for professionals. Sure, they're not quite as challenging, but if there are very few of these dogman roaming the earth, it's understandable why it is no easy task, and that's all I've got. Submitted by Stan C. Dogman, Frightening Encounters, Volume 2, Year 2000, Location, Minocqua, Wisconsin. My name's Jonathan, and I had an encounter with what I believe was a dogman when I was 12 years old, and on a summer vacation with my family. I grew up in the Milwaukee area, and it was a tradition for us for a long time to go up to Minocqua for about a week every summer. If you're not familiar with Minocqua, it's a pleasant, quiet lake town in the northern part of the state. My little brother was 10 years younger than me, so at the time, he couldn't participate in a whole lot. He would usually stay at the resort and do stuff with my mom while my dad and I would go fishing. I can't remember what the river was called because it's been so long since I've been there, but the locals knew it to have plenty of fish. Dad and I always had good luck when we'd cast out into the river. Usually we'd catch enough panfish to be able to fry up some fresh catch for every meal we had, aside from when we would occasionally go to a restaurant. I remember how on this particular day we were fishing near a bridge that paved the way for traffic and was used regularly. Sometimes you would see people fishing off the side of the bridge. On this day, though, Dad and I were the only ones there. I'd normally expect this species to be nocturnal. There was something about the animal that we saw that day that didn't seem to match up with how bright the sun was at the time. Of course, this is just my take, but I do remember my dad also mentioning something along those lines. So we were having a normal day fishing when suddenly this entity on two legs comes out of the thicket across the river and just stood there looking at us. It didn't make a single noise while it stared at us. It was so creepy because it wouldn't budge from eye contact. I know this sounds dumb, but it felt as if it was engaged in a staring contest with us. An intimidation tactic, I'm sure. It kind of felt as though this thing hypnotized both my dad and myself, but the more I think about it, the more I think that is mostly because we had never seen anything like this entity before. I get what people mean when they say their brains were trying to come off of all sorts of logical answers for something that, at the time, is incomprehensible. It was an awkward feeling staring at something that appears to be out of a storybook. When I asked Tom if I could submit a report, he asked me to make sure I described the entity to the best of my ability. The river wasn't too wide, maybe somewhere around 20 yards. It's been so long since I've been there that it's hard to give a proper estimate anyhow. It wasn't like the entity was right in my face or anything, but I was able to see its entire physique from where I stood. I've heard quite a few people say that the head reminds them of a German Shepherd, even though there were clear differences. I do see what they mean by the statement. Also, I found the colors of its fur to be similar to that of a German Shepherd, but there was something about its face that made me feel like the thing was part human. I can't say why I felt that, but there was just something about the presence that made it seem like someone was watching or judging us. It was like it was wondering whether it was worth the hassle to cross the river and kill us or something. The entity was tall, definitely much taller than me at the time. I don't think I was even 5 feet at that age. Before writing this report, I called up my dad to ask him his opinion. He claims that it was definitely over 6 feet, but he also said it was hunched over, so it was difficult to judge. But even hunched over, he said the beast was well over 6 feet. He also agrees that there was something oddly human about the entity, like it was more intelligent than any officially recognized animal, including apes. There was something about its hands that seemed so oddly shaped to me. It was kind of like they were long and gangly in proportion to the rest of its figure. I see why people refer to it as the Dogman, as there were similarities. Still, it also had features that I have difficult relating to anything else that I've ever imagined. The entity just kept staring at us until my dad quietly requested that we gather our stuff and head back to the condo. As you might suspect, that was the last time we fished that river, and to tell you the truth, we never did much fishing after that at all. We didn't speak too much about it, but it seemed pretty clear to both of us were too disturbed to spend much time in nature after the strange incident. I'll admit that seeing the creature has ruined the great outdoors for me. It's not like I haven't gone on outdoor adventures since then. I've gone on many. However, I always have this weird feeling like something is watching me, or even stalking me. It's truly amazing how much of an impact these things can make on your brain. For the longest time, I didn't want to admit it. but by this point I'm confident that I suffer from some form of PTSD. And to think that was only from seeing one of those creatures. I can't imagine how terrifying it would be to be chased by one. Submitted by Jonathan T. Dogman Frightening Encounters Volume 3. It was only about 5 years ago that I had what I hope to be the scariest event of my lifetime. I've lived in Texas my whole life, and I've spent a ton of time hiking through the desolate wild. But I've never heard of anything like what I saw that day. I don't want to reveal the exact location of this place because I'm sure there are at least a few people out there who will want to visit and attempt to lure these creatures in. I'm a big believer in karma, and the last thing I want is to have enabled somebody to become prey. It was an overcast day with cool temperatures, and I had decided to go outside for a solo walk through this beautiful canyon area that is a little over 20 miles from my apartment. My whole life I've dealt with depression. Luckily, I found that the best way to combat it is to walk through nature. I make sure to do it at least 3 times per week. Nothing out of the ordinary has ever happened, so this incident was earth-shattering for me. Just like any other day, I was walking normally when I suddenly jumped at a sound of a gunshot. I walked up a small hill to my left, and when I got to the top, I immediately noticed a man, dressed in casual clothing, sitting on the ground as though he had just fallen, and he had a pistol pointed at an animal that I could not identify. At first, I thought it was a very tall and lean bear, but then I noticed how long its arms were, and that it was walking on 2 feet. Also, its legs were shaped differently from what you see on a bear. Anyhow, Texas isn't exactly known for bear maulings, so there was nothing about the situation that seemed at all usual. Even though the man and the beast were about 100 yards away, I could still see long pointed nails, along with an opposable thumb. The thing did not have paws like a normal animal. I could tell by the body language of the creature that it wanted to eat the guy. Although the man was fully grown, he paled in size compared to this creature. It had to have weighed at least 4 times what this man weighed. I felt obliged to help, but I'm a 27-year-old woman, and I'm just over 5 feet tall. The last thing I wanted was for a creature to notice me and realize I was a better option for a meal. I hadn't seen it run at that point, but I could tell by its bulging muscles that it could be incredibly fast had it decided to sprint in my direction. There was a gulch that separated me from them, but I doubt it would be a major obstacle for this animal. I watched the man as he frantically tried to reload his weapon. At least that's how it appeared to me. My adrenaline was pumping so hard as my brain tried to think of a way to help. I so badly wished that there was a way I could distract the creature just long enough for a person to make their escape. When the dog-like creature looked as though it was about to lunge at the man, I don't know what came over me, but I suddenly shouted the word, "Hey!" in their direction. Just as I feared, the creature's head and ears immediately perked up and stared right at me. The speed at which it moved toward the edge of the cliff to get a better look at me was staggering. It was as if the creature glided rather than walked or ran. It was at that moment that I knew I had to get out of there. Even the man who had just gotten up from the ground was now waving his hand toward me, telling me to get the hell out of the area as quickly as possible. It was as he raised his weapon and shot another bullet into the back of the creature that I turned and ran as fast as I could toward where I had parked. My car was less than a mile away, and as I continued to run, I heard 2 or 3 more gunshots emanating from the distance. I also heard a noise that was sort of like a roar, but unlike any roar that I have ever heard before. There was something undeniably human about it, as if it was also capable of speaking proper dialogue. Not sure that makes sense or what gave me that idea, but I don't know how else to describe it. It was just all so incredibly bizarre. By the time I made it back to my car, there was a calmness in the air. I can't say whether it was because I felt safe or if the energy of the environment had changed. But I'm a very spiritual person, so I tend to believe in the latter. That all happened before I knew how the government does all it can do to conceal the existence of these rare animals, so I regularly scour the local newspaper and internet for any mention of what I saw that day. I suppose I'm hoping to come across some interview or something with the man who I saw shooting at the creature. Now I know that even if he made it out alive, mainstream publications would never mention the story. If they did, by some miracle, they would write the story in a way that it would make the man sound crazy. I've done so much investigating on cryptids over the years, and whenever mainstream media publicizes a story on these subjects, there is always an undertone. That makes it sound like some sort of joke. Anyway, I sure hope the man made it out of there, but sometimes I feel as though that was close to impossible. I sure wish there was something more I could have done that day, but it felt that all I would be doing is increasing the chances of there being 2 victims rather than 1. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy day to acknowledge my recount. Submitted by Anonymous. So guys, there's 3 chapters out of 3 of the books with many more chapters and many more encounters. Like I said, they're available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes. The audiobook versions are. The softcover and hardcover, or softcover and digital, are also available. It was honestly an honor to participate, whatever you want to call it, in this. I'm not sure I'll ever do it again, but it was definitely an experience that I'm proud to do. You know, I'm actually proud to have done it. Even though some people may call me a sellout or whatever, I don't feel like I sold out because someone had to narrate it, so why the hell not me? You know, I truly 100% believe in these creatures, and I just want what you guys want, is the truth. So, I don't know. Anyway, I don't know what I've got planned for tomorrow, but I think Sunday I'm going to address a couple of things that need to be addressed. And, well, if I turn stones over that really people don't want me to turn over, I'm not going to apologize, because I'm at my point now. And I think these things need to be addressed. And truth needs to be set. So, with that, guys, I'm going to bid you farewell and see ya!